Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, taking a fun and exciting video for you guys today because we're taking another look at the updated PCSX2x6, the brand new fork of PCSX2, the PlayStation 2 emulator that specializes in Namco 246 and Namco 256 arcade games. And I just hit another big update and another milestone with now 84% of the entire library 100% fully playable from start to finish on the emulator. And honestly, it would have been more fun to say 85%, but that basically means we're getting down to just a few games that don't run perfectly now, but I'm sure will soon. And that means the developer on this one is basically getting very close to making 100% of these games, including more specifically the arcade exclusives that only ever ran on this platform, playable for all time by everybody. And some of the most recent games that have been added in that work are going to be the Gundam games. There are 3 different Gundam games on the platform, and if you're a Gundam fan, there's definitely going to be a lot of fun to be had here. And even if I don't really know much about Gundam whatsoever, these are really fun games and definitely worth checking out. Before we get too much further though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe, and hit that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But this is Federation versus Zaft, and I will give you the titles in the description as well, because honestly, it can be a little bit confusing because the titles are quite long. And the nice thing is, even if all 3 of them are Gundam games that are working now, they all have a slightly different vibe, a slightly different storyline, and different gameplay mechanics, so it really isn't like 2 sequels to the original game. They really do kind of stand on their own, and these are games that you can upscale as well without getting any of the lines through. And big thanks to Space Rock 12 for helping with the capture as well. He's been helping me out on the Namco 2x6 side of things emulation-wise, so I did leave a link to his channel in the description below. Go ahead and give him a subscription, leave a comment saying VGE set me, and pump those numbers up, because as I like to say recently in videos, I am a firm believer in a rising tide floats all boats, and I want to see some of these channels get bigger because they deserve it, because they put a ton of work in. But honestly, PCSX2x6 is absolutely excelling at being a Namco 246 and 256 emulator. And if this is the first time you're watching one of these videos and you're not quite aware, PlayStation 2 hardware was used in arcades both by Namco as well as Konami. On the Namco side of things, they had the System 246 and 256, which were both PlayStation 2 based but had different hardware and different enhancements, so it really is in some instances more powerful than a home PlayStation 2. And because it does function differently and it does have a magic gate system to be able to get the games to run, this is something that was never actually supported in mainline PCSX2. So a fork of that code bringing in all the emulation bits to get these games running was something that people talked about for a very long time. The developer El Isra decided the time was now, and he was going to go in and make sure everything worked. Now we're moving over to Gundam vs. Gundam next, and this is a different game with a different kind of play style and a different vibe. Yes, of course, it's all going to be Gundam mech battle games. That is going to be the consistent here, but it is fun that these games exist and people can check them out. But I am curious, did you guys know of any of these Gundam arcade games on the 246 and 256? You're learning about them today, because honestly, the big games are going to be Time Crisis, they're going to be stuff like Cobra the Arcade, but these games are out there, they were popular in arcades, and you're probably never going to see a cabinet in North America would be my guess. Even at something like Round 1, these games are so old now, I feel like most of them have probably left the arcade floors. But if you ever have played any of these games in arcades, tell me where and tell me when, because I do love hearing the stories about where you guys encounter these things. And as far as the emulation is concerned, there really isn't anything to point to say that it isn't doing the job it needs to do. Now, of course, I haven't played every single one of these games in person in my life, but going through playing them in the background, listening to other people on my Discord talk about their experiences with them, there really isn't anything in the visuals, their controls, or otherwise to point to and say, it really needs to have some buttoning up. It would be fun at some point in time to get some online support for these things so you could play with people in different areas of the world, but otherwise, with 84% of the games now running, it really feels like this project is going to be maybe not wrapping up soon, but basically getting over the finish line for 100% compatibility and moving over to the bug testing phase. Now we're on AUG vs. Titans DX, or at least that's how I think you pronounce it, AEUG, because again, I am not the most massive fan of Gundam the anime, so I don't exactly have that memory of exactly how to pronounce everything. But it is another game working in PCSX2x6, and one that seems to be working exceedingly well and has a lot of virtual on vibes going on. It's also my first soundtrack sample, so go ahead and listen, and I'll be right back with a lot more. I mean, the one thing I've noticed about every single Gundam game when it has CD quality audio is the soundtracks are absolute bangers. Kind of feels a little bit like a mix of something from Lupin the Third and the film Boogie Nights in all the best ways possible. From the sound effects to the music here, everything is coming through the emulator great as well. And again, that is because underlying it, it is a fork of PCSX2. And I can really say that's one of the best emulators ever made for retro games. And now that we have PCSX2x6, you have one of the best emulators for arcade retro games as well, and that definitely is important because the PlayStation 2 lived a long and fun life in arcades, and again, it wasn't just Namco that used it. Konami used it as well, hilariously shipping a retail PlayStation 2 in a big steel box with an I/O board that I have in my collection and did a video on the Konami Python 2. Namco definitely went a little bit further with the hardware, and trust me, this is the type of thing you do not want to collect it. Every single Namco 246 or 256 board is absolutely massive. Wiring it up is a pain if you want to sit down and play a game for 30-45 minutes, because again, it's an arcade game, not a console game. You might spend all that time, if not more, getting it all set up before you're actually even sitting down to play. And that is why I'm always advocating for video game emulation, not just from a preservation standpoint, but on the arcade side of things, just an ease of use standpoint. Because you don't want to collect all these things, they take up a massive amount of space, and they are a metric pain in the ass to wire up, even if you're me, and you've already made custom harnesses for everything. A lot of times it's finding the right box that has the harness in the Ziploc bag that I marked. That takes me longer than actually connecting anything. That's just because I have way too many of the damn things at this point in time. So PCSX2x6 just completely lowers the barrier of entry to basically lying on the ground. You can just step over it. And that is what we want out of video game emulation, because these are some of the best retro games to emulate in my opinion, because for the most part a lot of them are probably games you've never actually played before or never even realized existed. And now we're getting close to that 100% mark, and it really does mean that in the future anyone's going to be able to sit down and play whatever Namco 246 or 256 game they want, and that is absolutely outstanding, because without it you'd have to own the original hardware or use the Play emulator, which, while I'm not knocking it, would never run a single game on this arcade board at full speed, no matter what CPU or GPU you brought to the party. Or PCSX2, so long as you have not a potato, you'll be running these things at full speed, at least up to 1080p and maybe beyond depending on your hardware. And that is definitely fun, because these things kind of now look like very early PlayStation 3 launch generation games and not PlayStation 2 arcade games. And it really is kind of fun that this exists, but in some ways also bums me out, only in the fact that I love bespoke 3D arcade hardware when companies like Namco, Sega, Konami, and everyone else were developing everything in-house, and the technology was beyond what home consoles could do. And even though a PlayStation 2 in an arcade box is a fun idea, it really kind of signaled the end of that kind of aspirational hardware in arcades, where arcade operators would go more towards consumer hardware to keep costs down. But I can't judge it honestly, because I probably would have done the same thing if I was in accounting. But one more soundtrack skill, because again, the music in these Gundam games just straight up amazing. And I'll be right back with just a little more news on this one. Now, I'm not sure if we're ever going to get to a point in humanity where they're making babies in space, but if they are, I feel like they could just put on the Gundam soundtrack here and do some space baby making, and it would fit totally fine. Completely random comment, but just kind of has that jazzy smooziness that sounds like something that would be very effective for that kind of space-related activity. And because you get full voice acting in the game as well, it is a ton of fun. But of course, it is in Japanese, so if you don't read the language, if you can't speak, then you're just going to kind of have to imagine what the story is in these games, because I don't believe they actually have English language support in them, because it's not like they really came over to the US. But if I'm wrong, leave me a comment down below, because I have to remember so many different facts or so many different things. Sometimes they just don't pop to the top of my head the minute I need narrated them in voiceover. But honestly, Israel has done an absolutely S-tier job in taking PCSX2, forking it, and making it play almost every single Namco 246 and 256 game. And the minute it gets to 100%, don't worry, I will do a celebratory video because it will be one of the biggest accomplishments in arcade emulation for any single platform we've seen maybe in the last couple of years. But short of that, if you've tested it, leave me your results down below. I would be curious. But it's time to wrap it up. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.